So we're delighted to share it with you. It's an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity and to just move forward this understanding. This, there's this physicist that lived 2,000 years ago. Some people call him a theologian. Probably one of the biggest mistakes the world has ever made was to call this man Yeshua a theologian, because all of a sudden everything that he taught, it's neuropsychology, it's the in-depth psychology, it's the most profound psychology you'll ever see. There's genetics there, there's physiology. It's mind-boggling. If you take him out of that niche, it's interesting. Albert Einstein says, the theory you have about a thing determines what you can observe. If you take Yeshua, right down to his name wasn't Yeshua, or pardon me, his name wasn't Jesus. That's what they call him. Jesus is Hail Zeus, Jesus. They had this rabbi, or that's what they called him, but he wasn't officially a rabbi, he was a teacher. People called him that. And, if you were moving into the Greco-Roman world 2,000 years ago, you probably wouldn't have a whole lot of luck selling the teachings of a rabbi. So Jesus became the option. And if you look at the words, it's Hail Zeus. Everybody knew that God and that religious figure. And if your theory about the man is that he's a theologian and it's about theology, then you're going to miss a whole lot of life-changing, profoundly brilliant teaching and understanding of just exactly how the mind works, who we are as human beings, and how the whole game functions. And so that's what we're here to put forward, to understand this theologian. Because he does mention the Creator, we could make that one small category of his work. The theory you have about a thing. If you have a theory and you approach him with brain cells that this is about theology, then you'll tend to hear all about theology. The brain cells I had, the theory I had about life, my early work was in the realm of electronics with a side study in physics. So I approach everything, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that. I approach everything with the theory in mind of energy systems and physics. And so when I first encountered the teachings of Yeshua as an adult, not the religious presentation that limits our understanding, but when I approached it as an adult, what became clear to me from the brain cells I had in physics, the theory I was able to posit in that regard was to see the profound teachings he had in the world of physics. With the naturopathic studies, the physiology, profound stuff about physiology, probably one of the most important pieces of information that, well, not the most important. Yeshua actually answered the question as to what was most important, and that had to do with the mind. Didn't have to do with loving your neighbor, didn't have to do with loving God, or it didn't have to do with loving yourself. When they said, what's most important in the law, the Greeks tell us, he said, love God, love neighbor as self. Not even close. But if you have that theory about it, that's what it'll seem. Well, there you go. And you'll notice how many millions of people in today's world proclaim to follow him and follow him dearly and sweetly and totally and completely, and yet they support hate and rage and fear and revolution and insurrection. It's just, it's amazing. But the theory you have about a thing limits what you can see. So when you look at that question asked, what's most important, the answer was about the mind. But if you have a theory it's about loving somebody and theology, you miss it. But probably one of the other most important statements that he made that anyone could understand, if they could understand the physics of it, if they could understand the physiology of it, their whole view, their whole theory about the man would change. And all of a sudden, a whole different picture clicks into view. In other words, the perceptual mind can teach us and show us something else out of what he offered. And that one is, and this one scares a lot of people because it's got two really big trigger words in it for most people. We're going to bring up death, and we're going to bring in sin. Boy, that sin and death stuff, that arouses a lot of insanity in people. But if you listen to the Aramaic translations of what the Greeks told us he said, he didn't say in the Greek context that as it's generally presented of God's going to get you for your sins, he's going to kill you, so the wages of sin is death. If people only understood that was physiology, and that the word sin in Aramaic is an archery term that means off the mark. If you picked up a bow and arrow on an archery course and you fired at the target and you missed the target, the scorekeeper would yell sin, i.e. you're off the mark. It would actually be kind of positive feedback, like take another shot. So if people understood that was physiology, that if they engage in energetic patterns that are off the mark, and the main ones, some of them, we talked the last couple of days, I suggest everybody watch the documentary on YouTube called Foodgate. If they understood that it was about food, that you actually have to take in energetic structures through your mouth, just like through your mind, that are meant for you. Things spiced up with sugar and salt and fat and rancid oils, caffeine, blue dye number, whatever. Those things, literally in the Aramaic sense, are sin. They're energies that are off the mark. And when you realize that, then you start recognizing that you need to put in your mouth what is designed to go in your mouth. Else it will kill you. And watch Foodgate. I mean, they lay out the scam of how people have been conned into believing things are food that aren't food, and how many millions of lives. In fact, he talks and documents about how, and I talked about this the other day, the old man and old woman disease of diabetes and liver failure are primarily alcohol-related diseases or sugar-related diseases and fructose-related diseases. But the alcohol, sugar, and fructose industry have gone to work and make people believe that this is actually food and it should be in everything they eat. and it produces death, massive, massive death. If one recognized that this structure called the body-mind unit is designed to incarnate love. That's the primary energy that it's designed for, and energies that are less than that, which are the kind of the normal energies of the culture. We talked the other day about thought terrorists, people who terrorize themselves and others. And some thought terrorists, on the surface, they're smiley. Everybody thinks they're wonderful and would never say poop unless they had even if they had a mouthful of it. And yet they go around with a smile on their face continuously at every little trigger where they're not being pleased, where someone's not doing everything they want them to do, producing every result they want. The terrorist thoughts in their minds, they sometimes rarely let it out of their mouths. In extreme frustration, you'll see them screaming in rage. But most people go, what a nice person. They have no idea what's going on under the covers. That's sin, physiology. That hurts our bodies when we're not willing to deal with that responsibly and stop terrorizing ourselves and others, even if we never say a word. The terrorism takes its toll in one's own body because those terrorist thoughts are off the mark. They're energies that don't belong. The arrow flew toward the target and missed the bullseye, and the scorekeeper yelled sin. If you don't say a word to that person who, God, if they'd only obey you, if they'd only do what you want them to, everything would be okay. If that goes on inside of you, even though you keep a smile on your face, you're destroying yourself. The wages of sin is death. This is not theology. It's got nothing to do with God. It's got to do with how we live as human beings, and we've got to stop doing this to ourselves if we actually want health and well-being. And if you've been doing it and you're going to stop, then you're going to go through a time period where things are going to be kind of rough, because you're going to have to go back through and undo what never belonged. How many times could you have been in screaming, raging fits, or how many times were you, but love was not present in you, and you didn't know how to bring it present? Oh, maybe you sat in church and heard somebody talk about it all, but then when you got home, where the thought terrorists were operating, maybe it was your children, maybe it was your parents, maybe it was your spouse, maybe it was yourself. All of that is going to have to be faced, dealt with, and removed. And the tool of removal, here's another big con job that happened with the Greeks, is the Greeks told us that forgiveness is about how I'm going to let you off the hook because I'm terrorizing myself with my thoughts and I'm in pain. And I believe that you caused my pain. When do I give that up and start to grow up and become an actual adult? Oh, I'm in frustration. I'm in rage. I'm in fear. I want to scream. I want to shout. I want to control. I want to fight. I want to attack. When do I give that up? Because all of that energy is an attack on my own body. So the man had a solution for that. He knew exactly how all of that worked. You have a temple. Your temple's designed for one energy and one energy only, and that is to incarnate love. That's it. It's not designed for anything else. And so once one recognizes what they're doing to themselves, and of course there's this game of blame that most people play, it's all everybody else's fault. We need to remember and recognize that perception is a skill. You know, the perceptual output of the mind is a skill. It's an image-making capability that we made up. With this tool, the mind constructs its world and a false self to match what it's been trained through many generations is familiar. It seems desirable and true. Like if you hold that you're not good enough, then what's desirable and true is to be treated like you're not good enough. And if somebody treats you well, it'll raise your stress level because you'll have to start to look at the thought disorders that have locked you into that pattern that's so familiar. And you'll notice the similarity between the word familiar and family. The only actual feature that's demanded by the skill called perception is that it is familiar. It has to fit the family narrative and keep us locked in the role which has been assigned to us by our history. Now that role might be painful, degrading, abhorrent even, but what people don't realize is they claim it. It's my identity. I can remember working with a guy. There was a physician in South Florida I used to do a lot of work with, and unfortunately, he moved to New Zealand. In any event, there was a client of his that he had been working with for some time that had cancer, a client friend. And this man had cancer, but his disease was not physical, and this physician friend of mine knew it, and he asked if I would work with him, and I said, sure. That was back when I did private work. And I did several sessions with him, and we got down to the point where this man realized that he created his cancer with his own rage and self-terrorism. I mean, he literally confronted that face to face. And then when I said, okay, so here's how we get rid of it. It's like, No, I don't want to get rid of it. So, wait a minute, you got cancer. You say you want to get, well, yeah, I'd like to get rid of cancer, but if I get rid of this, if I change that, then I won't be who I am. It was like his red badge of courage. It was his identity. He died of cancer. I went back to my friend Bruce, and it's like, we've been working on it, and Bruce is like, Michael, I told him the same thing. But it was his precious identity, and he didn't want to give it up. When those familial things happen, no matter how degrading or abhorrent it is, they're desirable. So this persona, in the Greek language, the word persona, personality means mask. It's totally false. It's a fraud. It's literally an internally generated self, and if you go back and listen to Yeshua, he said that self has to die in order for the true self to live, in order for there to be room for being to come into this form, in order for the created love that we are to come into this device that's designed for love, that which is based in hostility or fear, the old family patterns have to be removed. They have to be faced. If we accept that false identity, the assignment that was given to us by our family system, it can take a tremendous amount of effort to overcome it. Now, this internally generated structure of the mind, this internally generated perception, hey, it comes complete with color, sound, emotions, literally a whole world, and we substitute that world of perception for the actual experience in any given moment that's being presented by life. So there's an actuality that we live in, and this learned skill called perception structures a world out of its content, and it's like it puts it right up in front of the screen. You ever sit and watch TV, and somebody walks in the room and stands in front of the TV, and you're trying to see it, and you're trying to watch it, and you're like, hey, get out. It's exactly what the ego does. That's exactly what this non-being perceptual construct is. It puts it in front of the world so you can't see it. And most people are so used to that they don't even know that behind what they think they see, the perceptual constructs generated, behind that, they don't even know there's a world based in love to be experienced directly. Now, why would anybody tolerate such a fraud? Again, I offer it's because it's more familiar and desirable. After all, I made this rage-based, fear-based, greed-based, control-based self. I made it myself, so it must be perfect. And believing it's perfect, this technique of substituting a false-generated persona becomes a substitute for the direct experience of love, becomes acceptable. Few people are aware of it, even fewer would admit it, but virtually everybody lives in a reality of their own making. Now take that theory to Yeshua and start to read him in the first century Aramaic language, and you're going to get a whole different picture. I was sharing some of this with Jeannie this morning, and I'm thinking this is part of a new book piece that I'm working on. And she had gotten an email with a quote from Winnie the Pooh. And the quote, it fit perfectly with what we were talking about. The quote is, Winnie the Pooh says, "Hello, Rabbit. Is that you?" Rabbit replies, "Let's pretend it isn't and see what happens." Most people forgot they were pretending. Take that theory to the teachings of a man named Yeshua, and now you've got a foundation from which to understand, to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear exactly what he was talking about. And he wasn't talking about theology. He wasn't talking about dogma. He wasn't talking about doctrine. Actually, he makes a pretty clear statement why he was there. Now, recognize, and if you've never had the experience, go hold a newborn child and tap into the essence of that newborn, and you'll notice that the newborn is purely, totally, completely the presence of love. And love, not the verb. The newborn isn't loving you. The newborn is love. That's what you are, and that's what's designed to incarnate in your structure. And when you realize that, then you realize that everything else has to be forgiven, removed. Not, forget this idea of letting everybody else off the hook for what's happening inside of you. Remove what never belonged. And stop pretending like a rabbit that you're what you're not. See what happens. Everything changes. And we're here to support, inspire, teach, understand, learn. I love what Richard Bach says. We teach best that which we most need to learn. Here I am 50 years later still teaching it, so I must still need to be learning it, which I am on levels I never could have imagined. And so we're honored and delighted to be having this conversation, and you are here involved. And we'd love to hear from you if you have a thought, a question, an answer, an idea. Our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. And then if you push 1, we'll be having a personal conversation. And I would love to have a personal conversation with you. We are here to make ourselves available, particularly to support and assist everyone, including ourselves, in building the brain cells and having the eyes to see and the ears to hear what real healing means, and to, in an ongoing way, continue that conversation and that process. You will not find many places you can have an ongoing daily conversation about what healing looks like. Or you can go to the doctor, and the doctor can go check. Oh, let's see now. Our symptom schedule says we have a treatment for that. We have a treatment. Oh, we don't have a treatment for this, so we don't diagnose that one. Break down the word diagnostic. What's a dyad? It's 2. An agnostic is somebody who doesn't know. Diagnostic. Is there a healing conversation there? Well, no, we have a pill for you. And there's absolutely a place for that. Treatment can be powerful and save a life. Treatment can't heal a life, however. It's up to the life to heal itself. Yeshua said clearly what he was here for. I come to bring you life. If you put that theory into your mind, and that theory only, what he's here for, you will hear him in a whole different context, in a whole different way. And as Einstein says, the theory you have about a thing determines what you can observe. If you enter into a conversation about or with Yeshua or his words in that book, and people are slogging you about doctrine and dogma and sinners and mind crap that's been promulgated down through the years as his teaching, if it's not bringing you life more abundantly, it's not fulfilling the purpose he came for. It's fulfilling the purpose of somebody else, perhaps. When you start thinking about, we're at the point where we've got 32,000 sects of so-called Christianity. Why? Well, everybody's got different doctrine, different dogma. Okay, cool. So we don't have a doctrine nor a dogma. Have one. He wasn't here to give it to us. What he came for was to teach us a tool with which to have life, or a set of tools, and have it more abundantly. And that's what we're here to do, too. So, Miss Jeannie, we've got about 30. Oh, great. Let's say hello. Sweet.
I believe it's Miss Susan, 610. You're on the air.
Hey, guys.
Hey, young lady. Did you get that corrected commitment I sent you? I apologize. I sent the incorrect one to you in the first email.
that's fine, and I did. Thank you so much.
Good.
You helped us, my daughter and me, very much the other day dealing with Jacob, who is acting out tremendously, and we're trying to love him out of it and also give him some strict guidelines. And I could use a little more help, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, the first piece of input I'd have, just listening to your words, is you got to stop trying to love that kid. And you got to stop his mother from trying to love him. That's a huge, huge mistake. And we'll tend to create more trauma for him, for you, for mom. Let's imagine I'm going to build a house. And I have a set of blueprints. And somebody comes along in the night and changes several of the significant lines on my blueprint. And tomorrow I go to build a house. I look at the blueprint and I follow the lines. What happens? My house falls down. My offering is that something I learned from Aria, and I've shared this on the show before, that at 3.5 she has taught me what my job was as a father, and I would offer your job as a grandmother and your daughter's job as a mother. What she's taught me is that my job is to function as love and to recognize her only as love. And in resonating, strengthening that part of her, which I can only do from that part of me, I can help incarnate love, who she is, into her form and into our world. But if I think that I'm supposed to do something, whatever the world's definition of, I'm going to love you, I'm going to verb you to life, it doesn't work. I have to get the blueprint right. And the blueprint, my offering is, the blueprint is, first and foremost, I need to be functioning as the true being that, if I want him to function as the true being he is, I need to be functioning as the true being I am. But if my blueprint's off and I'm saying, well, see, now I'm going to love him, the verb, I'm going to try and do this to him, my blueprint is in la la land. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes, I think maybe I might have gotten everything wrong.
No, it isn't about wrong. It's just about keep doing the upgrades as we work. So remember that your grandson is an extension of your genes, and you're an extension of 1,000 generations of genes. Nothing your generations have ever done has been wrong. Perhaps it's been sin. Perhaps it's been off the mark. But when you buy that label of wrong, then you're probably going to pass that label of wrong on to your grandson. And maybe you passed it on to your daughter, who's passing it on to her son. And maybe it's time to remove that label and, to apply some forgiveness around this idea of, oh, here, I did it wrong again, because that's probably one of the family patterns. And one of the things that creates the kind of pain that, drives people kind of crazy and drives them to drink and drug. So I'd support you. This is a perennial issue that's come up several times for you, and so it'll probably come up several times for Jacob. And as you heal that in you, then you'll be able to be the presence of love to hold the space for him to work through what you're also working on, because I could just about guarantee he's working on the same issues you are. Except he had a little bit of a boost with a parent that was in a pretty rough place. So my offering would be to let go of the label, an old label you have for yourself of wrong, again, and maybe do some worksheets to free yourself of that one. And as you do, you'll open an energy window for Jacob to be freed of it as well. And then,
Yeah.
instead of having to effort doing something that you can't do, you'll be able to stand in being undistracted by your own mental constructs, undistracted by your own perceptual construct of self. You know, if you think about what I opened the show with, this role that we're assigned, you know, it's like we're supposed to fulfill it because that's what the family system says. And it's time, you know, you go back and you hear Yeshua saying, you can't follow me if you're not going to leave your father and your mother and your family. And people go, oh my God, do you mean I have to move out of the house? No, got nothing to do with that. He's saying I have to give up the familial constructs based in hostility and fear. I have to forgive those things. I have to leave that in order to really have the brain cells and the comprehension, the understanding of what he was saying and what he was teaching. So to follow him, I'm going to have to give up everything based in hostility, fear, self-deprecation, deprecation of others. And at each stage, as I upgrade and get clear about what it's like, I'm going to realize, boy, that last stage was pretty raunchy. But it was, you know, if you go to the creation story in Aramaic, where, you know, the story says, this, God created this and said it was good, and God created that and said it was good, and God created this and said it was good. The word good there isn't good, bad, as we generally want to do it. I did it right, wrong, good, bad. Actually, it says it's in, that word is in its proper place, in its proper time. So what today, in your state of understanding and awareness, you might look at and label something you did yesterday as quote unquote wrong, it was good. It was in its proper place. You were right on track. If you make it, if you fall into the family pattern of making it bad or wrong, or yourself bad or wrong, then you just replicate what happened yesterday. When you can recognize that what you did yesterday was perfect, and now it's a new day, and you got a new level of life and a new level of aliveness, and man, I wouldn't do that thing I did yesterday in a million years, but it was good. It was perfect in its time, because that's how I got here. And as I'm able to acknowledge that, and I'll see that what, you know, in today's mind, in today's understanding might look absolutely awesome, tomorrow it might look like, oh man, why would I ever have done that? But it was in its proper place. So breathing with you on all of that, because breathing is what allows whatever's resonated to move through and out of the system. Life. But the vision is to bring life. Yes, ma'am.
I took your commitment sheet and reworked it with Jacob in mind, knowing what would give him the barfs, what would be words that would trigger him.
Sure.
And I wrote him my commitment sheet, commitment to him, and then wrote him a letter about what we're going to do about. I know I'm getting very practical here, but we're on that level, I'm afraid, he and I.
Let's go for it. Absolutely. I'm with you, 100%.
So I don't know if you want to hear the commitment sheet. It doesn't, I mean, it's the same idea, but it's in words that I thought he could hear.
Please share it with us, because there are other people who are working with young people that have different brain cells, and it might just click something, especially following up what we did with it yesterday.
Okay, do you want me to send it to you, or do you want me to
Sure,
send it?
please. Yes. I think both would be awesome.
Okay, great. Okay. I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth. I commit to always being kind to you, nurturing you, and treating you lovingly, gently, and with respect in my thoughts, word, and deeds. whether in your presence or not.
Hmm.
In every interaction, do you want to say something?
No, I was just enjoying it, just, humming along with it.
Oh, good. I hope you keep humming. Here we go. In every interaction, I commit to affection for you and to look for and acknowledge the highest and best in you. My connection to God, because he is quite devout, so my connection to God, my relationship with you, and the maintaining of peace between us will always be more important than any issue. If anything unlike love comes up, I will step back and take the time to listen to my highest, most loving wisdom so that I can remain responsible for my own realities. I am here for you and with you. If we honor each other in this way, then whatever is painful in our lives, from our past as well as what may be happening right now, can be healed and we can grow. That's the commitment.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Right on track. Please send me a copy. We'll put it on the website.
Okay.
I mean, literally, I can see, I will put it on the website, so it'll be available in the app, and it will be, the commitment in the language from grandma to grandson. So, you're not the only grandmother, I'm sure, that's working with a grandchild that's being a challenge.
Oh,
and
right.
so I think that's perfect.
So then, can I read you the letter I wrote to him? Because this is where I might have been on track or not, and I'd love your input.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm talking to him, but not targeting just him, because it happens with all three of my daughter's sons. I start the letter. At various times, all three of you boys allow yourselves to use harsh, abusive language toward your mom. No matter the reason, that kind of language is unacceptable. It doesn't matter where it came from or whoever you learned it from. It is unacceptable. It is never acceptable. It is well known that the person who is abusive, who treats another cruelly or harshly, is in pain and needs help. All this stuff I got from you, Michael, so shut up about it. It is also true that the abuser gets the first hit, as such rage and ugliness damages the abuser's own cells and psyche before it damages anyone else's. So for purely selfish reasons, please never speak like that to anyone again.
Beautiful.
And then it gets even more. Thanks, Michael. And then it
that
gets
is
into
powerful.
the practical. Well, again, it's your teaching distilled for a boy. So,
well, that's what I'm loving about it, and my next request is that you send that letter along with permission for us to publish that side by side with the commitment on the website, because that's the conversation. I mean, you've got the real brain cells to take it into the actual world with the young man today that is powerfully done from a lot of work and a lot of experience. So.
Well, it has been a lot of experience. That's true. Jake, I know we changed your allowance from a free weekly gift to a business arrangement. The deal was that you would attend choir rehearsals and services, and that you would do things around the house to earn your allowance. You were upset that I would attach a value onto the household chores, as you said you do tons of things around the house anyway. And that is entirely as it should be. A housemate getting free room and board would naturally pitch in willingly and cheerfully as a partial payment for the privilege of having such a great arrangement. I will now add that if you fail to do any of these things, and Michael, this was your suggestion, and it made a lot of sense to me. I will now add that if you fail to do any of these things, attend the services and rehearsals, help around the house, and speak respectfully to your mom, the allowance will be entirely cut. There will be no going part way on this. It will be all or nothing. And mind you, hang on, because I did modify it later, but this was the first letter I got to him. I know you are under pressure, and I have been through a great deal. I know, too, that giving up using any of the substances that provided relief to you is a huge change and can be very hard. Feeling almost as if you have given up a lover.
can I interrupt here? Let me throw in a thought while it's fresh.
Yeah.
You shared with him the idea of how he's offending his own tissue structure with his hostility toward his mom. I think it would be beneficial to tie in right here that that's one of the ways he keeps himself under pressure. That's self-terrorism that we've been talking about the last day or two.
Oh, right. That's great. Let me make myself a note. Yeah. Got it.
You know, the way it fleshes out when it looks like he's doing it to mom, he gets the original. It's his own tissue structure that he's putting on alert and terrorizing.
Yeah, great. I love it.
And keeping himself under pressure with that.
So should I go on?
Please. Yep.
Okay. I know you are under pressure and have been going through a great deal. I know, too, that giving up using any of the substances that provided relief to you is a huge change and can be very hard, feeling almost as if you have given up a lover or have had air sucked right out of your lungs. I take all this into account, but mistreating others, not helping, not meeting your commitments at church will hurt you first of all. It will contribute to your not feeling good about yourself. This arrangement will help get you right back on your feet so that school and career will seem a happy prospect rather than something scary. You will surely say that I am punishing you, which he has said. I want you to know that I am loving you the best way I know how. So though it might feel like not what you want, it comes from the huge unconditional love that I have for you and will always have no matter what you do. Love, Orb. So then he writes back. This is the sentence he writes back. She insulted me first today, so this does not make sense. How do you like that?
Well, you know what he's doing here is he's begging you to discipline him, putting the word discipline in its rightful context, to properly teach him. And so I would see that as a perfect place to open the next level of conversation. Well, son, as I said, somebody who does that sort of stuff is in pain. Do you suppose that over some of the interactions you have had with your mother, or maybe the interactions you've seen your mother have with your dad, might be leaving her in some pain? So who now gets big enough to become the healer and step up with love rather than just vengeance, rather than just, tit for tat?
Right.
So it's a perfect opening for true discipline.
So, that's what happened, I hope. I mean, I wrote back, and then I wrote back again today, because today is allowance day, and I'm not sending it yet.
Right. Yeah.
So I wrote back and said, please, Mr. Boone, his middle name is Boone, and that's an affectionate name. Work with me.
Right.
Don't just blow this off. What is happening now is not sustainable. No, your mom is not perfect, and she's struggling, working too hard, spread far too thin. She knows you are having your own huge challenges. No one denies that. Please take some time to think about what I said. I am sure that if she said something bad to you, you can talk it out. Same with anything I might say to you. Do not shut us out. Please, please, please. Love you forever. Orb. Okay, that was yesterday.
Beautiful.
I haven't had a... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I haven't had a word with him, but his mom said that as a result of my interchange with him, he did a whole bunch of chores around the house. Then he drove out ostensibly to go to his AA meeting and went to a liquor store, bought liquor, and got drunk. Came home drunk. So he's giving her both messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, remember, when truth shows up, stress goes up. My take would be that a next level conversation with him, when he says mom attack, might be, well, do you see this paragraph I wrote to you? And repeat the commitment that you made to him. And let him know that as a result of the conflicts that you and he have had, this is, you could come from a mindset of being pissy just like he likes to be on occasion. And you just bounce off of each other, and let him know this is your effort to open a space for healing for him and for you. And then, perhaps he could, share the commitment with his mom that you made to him, and see if maybe they could negotiate an arrangement where they make a commitment to each other to change the family dynamic, because the family dynamic isn't very pretty. This is, again, an opportunity to discipline him, to properly teach him, to, at his age, with what he's been through, who modeled for him the option of, gee, I could return a kind word for this angry word or this pained word. That hasn't been happening.
Exactly.
And so, inviting him to become the healer in the family, and not in the sense of taking care of or fixing anybody else, but bringing forward an understanding of some tools and a way to do it differently. And, you might point out that, you've been learning to do this for, just a few decades more than he has. And, point out and notice that you haven't gotten it all perfect yet. And he doesn't have to have it all perfect today, but he's making huge progress. And, when truth shows up, stress goes up, and when stress goes up, if somebody doesn't have the tools to get rid of the stress, they run for their anesthetic, and it sounds like exactly what he did.
Right. So, but I'm encouraged by what you say, because I think I did a good thing. Imagine that.
I think it's beautifully done.
Thanks. Well, I wrote a follow-up letter today because the deal on his allowance, I spelled it out even more, and I won't go into it, but there are 4 requirements. Remain sober from all substances, and I said, I know I'm adding this on, but recent events show me that this needs to be added.
Absolutely.
And then household chores, speak with respect, and attend your programs and do your jobs. Then you'll get your allowance.
And it would be reasonable to put in there, and I reserve the right to, negotiate another shift in if we need it, and I offer you the same right. Treating him as an equal, and that things are there to be fair, to be an incentive, and to bring healing into his life and into your whole family's life.
I like that. I'm going to do that. So I want you to hear this, Michael, because it's really like what you just told me to do. I already did it. Yay! It is. In addition, please read my commitment that I wrote to you in the previous letter. It would be ideal if you would read it every single day. It may seem barfy and ridiculous at first, but if you take in what I say in there and do likewise to others, I guarantee your whole life will change for the better. You will be a much happier and productive fellow. You have so much going for you, but anger and fear seem to be eclipsing your seeing this at the moment. Believe in yourself, Mr. Boone. You are a total treasure, and you are the only one who seems not to know it. All my love, Orb.
Beautiful. That's really powerful.
Thanks to you. Yep.
Powerful. Now, you say he's devout. What does devout mean?
Well,
in the context of his life.
Well, it's true. He was brought up in the church, and I know how you feel about some of the darker side of the church, but his mom is one amazing, open-minded, wonderful priest, and she has been as good of a model within the church structure as I can imagine. And I don't just say, I won't go in, she's just been tremendously effective as a priest for bringing people into her church and teaching them dialogue, open-mindedness, flexibility, holding a loving stance toward everything, so on and so forth. And he grew up with that. And at times he has said to me, when he's in his best mind, he says, my mom is amazing. And I do count on God. I just do. I'm so glad my mom taught me about God. So whatever that means, I'm not sure, but he's got it in there somewhere.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question is that I notice in your writing to him you're not making any reference to Scripture or what have you. And you might, if he's got that devout streak in him, and, sometimes it's latent and sometimes it's out there, it might be good to tie into, like, for instance, the commitment, and, you might not necessarily at this stage change to the Aramaic, because it is power in the context of this kind of conversation, quote unquote, loving your neighbor as the world thinks of love. That's a whole big piece of teaching that he's going to have to get at some point. But, for instance, pointing out to him the fact that the commitment that you wrote to him is your way of expressing your care and concern and doing exactly what Yeshua said in, whatever the scriptural quote is in Matthew, blah, blah, blah. Love your neighbor. That this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then that might key in with some of the brain cells he's got for, oh yeah, that was the directive, wasn't it? And then, so how could you express that? If you want to bring that devoutness into your actual life, how can you express that towards your mother? What would your commitment look like? Base it on mine, or I'll work with you and help you to develop one, and or I'll work with you and your mom if you want to develop one that really works and opens a space for communication and nurturing each other.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
And teach him about thought disorders and anything that is not loving that his mind thinks is a thought with which he's either going to terrorize and inflict pain on himself or terrorize or inflict pain on others. And that's totally out of harmony with his devout nature. And he wants to bring that forward. He's got, as all of us has, he's got the ego nature, the non-being mind. And, that's his battle right now. And, the fact that you've done so much work, you're perfectly placed, and you have such a connection with him, you're perfectly placed to facilitate him moving to the next level of, getting out of the cultural mind of hostility and fear that so many kids are in.
Yeah, they are, more than ever.
Oh, it's tragic. It's tragedy.
Yeah, it's scary, and it's in the culture, it's in the political arena, and it's on the internet. It's just everywhere. And they're on...
Massive.
So he does have a really good theater job where he's teaching little kids, and he's evidently very good at it. And he's got the lead in a musical down there, and when he slips into that, he's like a healed person. He's like Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, he's just totally okay. So,
well, which persona is active?
Yeah.
And when children are abused, they tend to compartmentalize their minds and separate out. And it sounds like he's gone through some significant abuse, and so. And from what you're saying, there's a good possibility that he has some of what might even be diagnosable multiple personality disorder.
Oh, yeah.
And,
it could be. And he's also heavily medicated. So it's hard to get a read. He's sleepy all the time.
Down through the years, the one consistent piece of information I've got from people in the realm of psychology is the worksheet's the only thing they've seen that integrates multiple personalities. And when you there might be a safe way to open a conversation like that. It's like, Jacob, sometimes I find myself in this persona, and in the Greek word mask, explain that to him. This persona that I've got going is angry and upset and, self-condemning or, whatever descriptors you give it. And there's a part of me, when you started throwing some of that stuff back to me, that angry stuff you had going on, that wanted to get into that. And the commitment I wrote to you is me trying to heal my thought disorders to come out of that, because that's not where I want to live. I want to live in a space of gentleness, respect, and care and concern with you. And I know you want that with me when you're in the real Jacob. But when you're not, you need a ladder to climb out, and that's what this commitment is a ladder to climb out of those thought disorders.
That's great. That's really good. I've taken notes. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to put these to use.
Well, I am honored and delighted, and please, if it works for you, of course, the names will be changed to protect the guilty. but if some of these communications you'd share with us, and I'd love to put them on the website, as an example for here's how one grandmother, and maybe privately, if you wanted to, you could be identified if someone needs help with that specific situation. There might be someone who, reads that and goes, how do I get in touch with this person? How do I get advice here? Then, through us, or if you wanted to be publicly noted on the website, that might not be a good idea. But in any event, I just see it being a really powerful road. You're hoeing the road for healing between the elder generation and the kids today, and that's just so desperately needed. So I hope to be privy to all those communications, and with permission to publish them, names redacted.
Thanks. I will put them together and send them along.
I appreciate it.
And
that's
I can't
awesome.
thank you enough, because we just haven't had the words, and you give us the words, and then we get a footing, and we're going ahead. And I haven't heard from him, so say a prayer.
Well, we hold the space and just see the openings happening, and thank you for what you're doing. Millions yet